Okay, we're going to talk about the new norm and adjusting to it. I was out in the park a couple of weeks ago, and there's a guy out there, a homeless guy. Looks like he's homeless anyway. And he hangs around the park every once in a while. And I said to him, "Hi, how are you? And how are things going for you?" And he said, "I'm adjusting to the new normal." And I thought, wow, that's perfect. It's a perfect topic to talk to the devotees about. Normal. So, yeah, we're in a new normal. We had a normal, and now that normal is gone, and we're in this new normal. In the beginning, it was really different. I don't know about you, but whenever I go to a store, I remember a few weeks ago, I'd go to a store, maybe Trader Joe's or something. I needed to get some yogurt or whatever. So I was the only one in there wearing a mask. And so then all of a sudden, I noticed more and more people. Now you go to a store, any kind of store, and everybody's wearing a mask. So if you see somebody that's not wearing a mask, you think, wow, what's with this guy? Why is he not wearing a mask? So in other words, we, without knowing it, we have adapted to a new normal. And this is something that we've always done, but we're just now noticing. So, yeah, we identified with something that was normal, and that normal is gone. And here we are with a new normal. Don't you hate people that do air quotes? No, I only do that just because it irritates me when people do it a lot. So I like to irritate myself with it. So normal, let me give you the definition. Normal means conforming to a type, standard, or regular pattern. Our different conceptions of life. In parentheses, what is and what is not normal are grouped about the perceptions within the mind. So normal is a perception that's grouped about our mental whatever. The mind says it's normal, and so it's normal. The mind tells us when it's abnormal, and we perceive it as abnormal. So these are different conceptions of life. What are we talking about here? Conception is the capacity, function, or process of forming or understanding ideas or abstractions or their symbols, or a general idea, a concept. A complex product of abstract or reflective thinking, or the sum of a person's ideas and beliefs concerning something, the originating of something in the mind. So we're talking about things that go on within the mind. It's like the mind is doing its writing its own movie as it goes, and it's deciding what is normal and what is not normal. The rest of the world is kind of going on. When I look out my window, I see the mountains. I live in the Catalina foothills on above Tucson. And I see the mountains, and you know what? They haven't changed. It's the same every day. So pretty much the rest of the world is still in dealing with its normal according to their perception. The rattlesnakes, the rabbits, and the cactus and everything, they're dealing with a normal according to what's grouped about their mind. And we're a little disturbed because we think that our normal has been taken away. Now we're forced with a new normal. This is just a function of our mind. So our mind is telling us what is and what is not normal. This has been happening since time immemorial. Time immemorial meaning since we came in contact with time. Prior to us leaving Krishna Prior to us leaving Goloka Vrindavan at home with Krishna, we weren't associating with time. Time meant nothing to us because we were in our normal state, eternity. We were eternal, always having been, always will be. That's the definition of eternal. So we are eternal living entities. That is our nature. And that's what we, our true self, understands. We understand that language, eternal. So when something changes, it kind of bothers us because normally, for the soul, for the living entity, things don't change. They just always increasingly get more and more ecstatic. That is liberation. That's the conception in the liberated stage. The liberated pure soul is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat, you're eternal. Chit, you're full of knowledge. Nothing you don't really need to try to find out. You don't ever feel like you don't know anything. You're full of knowledge. You are an eternal know-it-all. And then Ananda, the soul is eternally blissful, happy, always happy, except this happiness continues to grow and increase. So that's the real world. Why is it real? Because it's eternal. It doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have an end, and it doesn't have a duration. And that's the world that we belong in. That's our home. So here we are, we found ourselves in this material world. We have come here because we want to change the normal. Normal was being with Krishna, associating with Krishna and all his unlimited devotees, and noticing that Krishna was the center of everyone's attention, including us. So perhaps out of some envy, whatever. We'll deal with the why later on. But what happened? We decided that we wanted a new normal. We wanted to go from our home with Krishna to a new situation where we could perhaps be the center of attention. And so, why should Krishna steal everyone's love and attention? Why not me? I can be as good a God as Krishna. So here we are in this material world, and we're into a different kind of normal. Things here are not eternal. Things keep changing. They've been changing all along. We just happen to notice the change when it happens abruptly. Like all of a sudden, this big change, this normal that's been thrust upon us, all of a sudden it came along. And so we feel a little distressed because my old normal was taken away and my new normal was thrust upon me. It's against my will. I don't want to stay inside and I don't want to do what I'm told. I don't want to socially distance. I don't want to do it. I came to this material world to get away from dictation. I don't want to be dictated to. I want to be the dictator. See? I want to be in charge. Excuse me. And I want things the way I want them to be. So that's the nature of the living entity when he comes in contact with the material energy. So let's go to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verses 8 and 9. I think we've got 8 on the screen right now. Krishna says, Sariram Yadavapnuti Yachara Yachcha Utakrama Ishwaraha Vitvaitam Samyati Yadat Samyati Yad Vayur Gandhan Ivashaya. Can't see that screen very well, but I'll live. Translation: Krishna says, The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So you can see what Krishna is talking about. Your normals change. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another. Just like the air carries an aroma. You can smell sometimes. My neighbor is cooking Italian food. I can't see the Italian food, but it drifts in through like the aroma. I smell it. So the living entity carries his conceptions. Remember, we define conception. It's a mental process. In other words, what you think your life is, that conception of life, you carry it from one body to another, just as the air carries an aroma, subtle body. So when you are a dog, you're thinking that you are a dog, and you're convinced that you're a dog. You cannot convince a dog that he's not a dog. It's very difficult even to try to convince a human being that you're not a human being, because you're not that body. You're not this gross material body. You are something that you might consider to be human-like in your eternal liberated stage. You have an image like a human, a form like a human, but human being is something that it's a term that applies to a type of living entity. Living entities take, when I talk material living entity, a type of body, it takes birth. It is subject to disease. It gets old if it lives long enough, and then it dies. Either you die early and you don't suffer old age, or you get all of them. You get birth, disease, old age, and death. So this is the nature of the material body. And as the soul, as you go from one body to another, as you transcend after death, and as you go to your next birth, you carry different conceptions of life as you travel. Thus, he takes on one kind of body again and again. Thus, he takes on one kind of body and again quits it to take another. This is the description of, some people call it reincarnation, or you could call it transmigration of the soul. The soul transmigrates according to your desires. Now you may say, well, if you're saying I was a dog, when did I want to be a dog? Well, the answer is very simple. You may not have pictured yourself being a dog, but you had the mental capacity or the desires of a dog. You became dog-like in what you wanted. And therefore you wind up in the body of a dog, not as a punishment. You get the body of the dog to fulfill your desire to live like a dog. Now, what do I mean by that? You may say, I never wanted to live like a dog. Well, let's take, for instance, sex life. Sex life is very complicated for human beings, but it's not very complicated at all for dogs. Dogs can have sex with anybody they choose, when and wherever. They don't have to get a room. The male dog doesn't have to take her out to dinner. There's no palimony. You're not held to, you don't have to be responsible in your sex life. Prabhupada points out that a pigeon can have sex every 10 or 15 minutes, all day, every day. And there's no complications, you see. The male pigeon doesn't have to stay around and build the nest and hatch the eggs and teach them how to fly. He just goes off and continues looking for something to eat, a place to sleep, someone to mate with, and he defends all of that. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are the things that all the 8,400,000 species of life do. Everything does that. So there's nothing special about eating or sleeping or mating or defending. Human beings, however, have a mind that's advanced to the point that it can be responsible in its eating. The dog, he doesn't have so many choices. Snakes, they don't have many choices. There's a certain type of foodstuff that they have to eat. You can give a snake rice and chapatis and sabji, and he'll starve to death. He can't make a meal out of that. He's forced to chase rodents and other things. In Arizona, we have these king snakes, and you've got the rattlesnakes, and the rattlesnakes eat rodents, and the king snakes eat rattlesnakes. So it's kind of interesting. Everything has its menu handed to them when they take their birth. And the next verse is going to explain that a little bit more. So human beings, however, we have a choice of what we can eat, what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, and why. So the human body gives us tremendous flexibility in our decisions of eating, sleeping. Do I want to sleep simply, or do I want to have a $10,000, what do they call them, those special beds that have a number you can dial in? So do I want to go for that? Mating, do I want to mate with somebody who's a movie star or whatever? And defending our modes of defense. We don't have to depend on teeth and claws. We have guns and bombs and airplanes and so many things. So our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending in the human form of life may be more complicated and more sophisticated. Nonetheless, it's still the same: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So I'm going to go into the purport. Are there any questions before I proceed? All right. Prabhupada says here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade. And if he likes, he can move to a lower class. The new independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends on him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of the body is it is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. Let me back up and and dwell on something Prabhupada is saying here. He's saying that if you have the consciousness in this body, in other words, if you have the values of a dog, you're not really so particular. You'll eat anything that appeals to your tongue. You're constantly just looking for sex life, sleeping, and then consciousness of a dog. See, dogs aren't very particular on who they mate with. If we're like that, if we're animal like that, then we'll get cat or dog body, snake body, whatever. If you're envious and poisonous, always poisoning others. Like people sometimes ask me, what about, how do you get the body of a snake? Well, you think what a snake does. A snake, a poisonous snake anyway, they will bite you. They bite. They inject poison. So there are people who are kind of fond who injecting poison into your consciousness. And what I'm talking about, poison to you, the living entity, because you, the soul, you're all about truth. What is true? So knowledge is golden. Uh, it's your eternal nature to know everything, factual things, real things, reality. So some people are very fond at giving you untruth, uh, lies, speculations, whatever. So this is an envious kind of person. There are some people who, I meet many people who think that uh, everything is a conspiracy. There's actually some sort of a diagnosis for that. And I'm sure, Lee, you may know about that. Everything's a conspiracy. Everybody's out to get me. And they'll tell you a conspiracy without having any real proof. And they tell it to you as if it's a fact. That is a way of poisoning your consciousness, because you might walk away thinking this is the absolute truth, you know? So this type of consciousness is poisoning. The Prabhupada goes on that if you fixed your consciousness on godly qualities, that you will change into the form of a demigod. Wow, isn't that great? Wouldn't you like to be a demigod? Many people would leap at that. Most people would leap at the opportunity to be a demigod, to live a life of opulence, beauty, taste, elegance, power, in extreme enjoyment. Why, that would be wonderful for the average person. That's what everybody wants. Most people call that going to heaven. I want to go to heaven. Why? Heaven is so good that the streets in front of my house, probably including my driveway, are going to be made out of gold. And the gates, probably including my gates, they're going to be pearl. So everything is great. The weather's going to be great. They're going to have unlimited channels on my cable, and everything is going to be fabulous. I'll have servants, you see. I'll be very beautiful. Everyone around me will be very beautiful. So we find that when we talk with people about going to heaven, their plans rarely ever include the supreme owner of heaven, God. So some people are so fixed on heaven that they're not so much thinking about God. So do they really want to go to Krishna Loka, to associate personally, constantly with God, with Krishna? Well, that's not part of their plans, but they want heaven. So you really want to be a demigod, or at least live on a demigod's planet and get the benefits of living there. It's extreme enjoyment. The downside, and in the material world, there's always a downside. The downside is that you have to eventually die, even if you're in that heavenly arena. You still have birth. If you go to a demigod's planet, a heavenly planet, you have to take birth there. There is still some disease, but hardly any, practically none. There is old age, but it doesn't happen until about 6 months before you die, and you live hundreds of thousands of years. And then there's death, and at the end of that, you come back here. So whereas it's a great trip, you're going to have a whole lot of fun, meet a lot of beautiful people, but you're going to end up right back here with the same problems you have right now. You didn't make any advancement. It's like people going on a fantastic vacation. You go on vacation, say you go on a Caribbean cruise. 5-star Caribbean cruise and you're visiting, you're gone for a whole month and you're visiting all these wonderful places throughout the Caribbean, and you're staying in 5-star, what do they call them? All-inclusive hotels. So you can have anything you want for the whole trip. So when you checked in, when you got on the boat to go on your cruise, you've paid for, say, 10,000, or I don't know what such a vacation would cost. Let's say it's $20,000 you paid, 5-star all the way, first class. And at the end of that $20,000 that you paid for this big cruise, it's time to leave. You have to get off that boat and go back and earn some more money. And so the living entity is exposed to that kind of situation, because if you make it to the heavenly planets, you have to work very hard to get there. You have to become, as Prabhupada says, you fixed your consciousness on godly qualities. That's kind of hard to do. So anyway, if you wind up taking your birth in one of the heavenly planets, all of that pious accumulation of pious activities, it's called punya. Punya is an accumulation, it's like a bank account of pious activities. And if you've accumulated enough punya to take you to a birth and a life in the heavenly planets, ultimately you will experience a death in the heavenly planets when that punya bank account runs out. Then you find yourself right back where you started from, trying to be all you can be again in this world. Prabhupada points out, though, he says, if he, the living entity, is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. Now that's the ultimate destination for the living entity. Why? Because Krishna is everything. Krishna is the source of everything. If we're looking for enjoyment, Krishna is the source of enjoyment. If we're looking for love, he is the source of love. So if we can attain our lost loving relationship with Krishna, we are inundated by love. We're drowning in an ocean of eternal, sweet, wonderful love. Krishna is the most beautiful. We have nothing but beauty in our life. All of the inhabitants, including you, are beautiful in their natural state. All of the inhabitants there are beautiful. They're all charming. They're all talented. We have transcendental talent to sing and to praise Krishna by every word. Every in the spiritual world, every word is a song and every step is a dance. So that is the ultimate goal. And Prabhupada says that if you're in Krishna consciousness, you'll be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and associate with Krishna. That is Prabhupada's promise to you. This is what you get if you practice Krishna consciousness. Now, what are we talking about? What is this Krishna consciousness that gives me this transference to the spiritual world where I get to associate lovingly with the Supreme Godhead? This Krishna consciousness is basically being conscious of Krishna. How do we become conscious of Krishna? First of all, let's start by chanting his name. Krishna's name and Krishna are one and the same. When you vibrate that sound, Krishna is there with you. And so if we chant Krishna's names, if we chant the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, you are associating directly with Krishna. That is not a mundane material sound vibration. That Krishna's name, that mantra, is the same as Krishna. So as you hear that chanted from your mouth, received from your through your ears by someone else chanting, or just chanting it in your mind, as you continue to experience this mantra, however you experience through your senses or within your mind, uh, you become fixed on Krishna. And the next step is you'll start to perform some service, loving, devotional service to Krishna. That's our natural state. I'm not asking you to do anything that's unnatural for you, the living entity. What you're doing right now is very unnatural. You're in a human body and you're confined because there's disease out there that threatens your body. It doesn't threaten you, the living entity. It threatens your body. Because of your conception of the body, you're held prisoner by your concept of the body that you have. So if you think about that, I'm a prisoner of my conceptions. I've conceived that I am a human being, therefore I am one, and therefore I'm exposed to all the weaknesses that a human body would be exposed to. So does that make any sense? All right, Prabhupada goes on. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. Our present activities and our present body, our present activities are the background of our next body. In other words, by our consciousness that we have now and the desires that we have now, we're building our next body. It's being built for us as we think, as we do, as we speak. So if we're behaving like a dog, then a dog's body is being built for us. If we're thinking like a dog, if we're thinking like a demigod and behaving like a demigod, then developing that consciousness, then a demigod's body is being built for us. But if we're thinking about talking like and behaving like a devotee of Krishna, then that body, which already exists and has existed for eternity, that body is becoming available for us to reoccupy, go back. Not that it's what we already are. You are that eternal body, but you'll occupy it in your consciousness. You'll reoccupy it consciously. So, in other words, you don't. The living entity, if you could see yourself, you just don't realize who you are or what you are. Finding the self is called self-realization. We hear so many people give so many explanations of self-realization, and for the most part, they're all bogus. Self-realization is realizing who and what you have been and always will be eternally. And that is a beautiful, loving part and parcel of the Supreme Godhead. You are his eternal associate. Except while you're here trying to be all you can be in the material world. So, Prabhupada goes on. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma. And he has to quit this body in due course. We all have to die. If one takes birth, death is guaranteed. If one takes if one dies, and he's not uh, advanced to the point of returning back home, back to Godhead, then birth is guaranteed, either in heaven or in some part of this material world. And if you take your birth there, death is also guaranteed. So one gets a different body according to karma, and has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggle for existence. That's where we all are right now. We're in this karshati, we're in this struggle for existence. We are trying to defend ourselves, our bodies, not ourselves. We're trying to defend our bodies from disease. You, the pure living entity, there's no possible way that you could ever be affected by any disease. You are eternal. You are part and parcel of God. Do you think God has to worry about disease? God doesn't have to worry about old age. He doesn't have to worry about taking birth, death. God doesn't die. Neither do you. You are part and parcel of God. So therefore, you have his attributes. So I'm going to go on to the next verse. Are there any questions or comments? All righty. I'll take that as a no. Moving right along. Next verse. Srotam chakshu sparsanam cha rasanam grihanam eva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayam upashevate. Krishna says, the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. This was described in the previous verse, but Krishna is saying that the living entity, as you take another gross body, people wonder, what do we mean when we say gross body? Gross, we mean that which is perceived through the material senses. When we take another gross body, you obtain a certain type of ear and a certain type of eye, a certain taste, certain tongue, certain nose, and a certain sense of taste. These are all particular to this body that you've taken. Even though you may have been a rich man in your human life, you may take the body of a dog, and the dog, he's got a different things that he's interested in. The rich man may be very interested in eating very expensive cuts of meat. And then when you get if you're fond of eating meat, so are dogs. Dogs are not that particular, though. It doesn't have to be an expensive cut of meat. It can be roadkill. It can be whatever. So you get a particular sense of touch, particular tongue. The female dog, when you see the female dog, she looks so beautiful, so very attractive. She attracts you sexually. Whereas before, in other forms of life, that's not true. So as you take on this gross body at birth, you obtain a certain type of ear, tongue, nose, eye, sense of touch, and these are all grouped about your mind, your perception, your conception. It is all mental. In other words, you are a mental case. and you thus enjoy a particular set of sense objects. The dog isn't interested in playing video games. He's interested in maybe chasing his tail. So, and like that. Prabhupada says in the purport, in other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life, he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Keep in mind, as I've said before, taking this cat or dog body is not a punishment. You're getting what you wanted. Now you may say, no, I don't. Well, yes, you do. You wanted to have the restrictions of a dog, which aren't that many. Think about it. If you're going down the road, if you're going down the street and you come to a stop sign and there's a policeman sitting over on the corner, you'll stop at the stop sign. Hopefully you would stop even if the policeman wasn't there. Some people will not, but all of you would, I'm sure. If there's a dog running along beside you, he doesn't stop for the stop sign. He goes right on through. The policeman doesn't go hunt him down and ask for his dog license, write him a ticket. You know, the dog isn't held to the same responsibilities as the human being. You have the responsibilities of a dog. And that's not many. The dogs aren't asked to be very responsible. You may live with a master who says, stay off the couch. You know, so that may be a restriction. Most people, at least in the Western world, especially in America, their dogs have almost no restrictions whatsoever. There may be some. I don't know, but it seems like from as what I observe, people really don't give any restrictions, or they don't expect much from their dogs, except I just want you to give me enjoyment. You know, give me association. So, and actually, there may be it's a much deeper relationship than that. I remember in 1976 in New York, Srila Prabhupada was there. This was for the 1976 Rath Yatra. I was there, and so many other devotees had come from all over for the first ever Rath Yatra in New York City. And Srila Prabhupada was noticing in the apartment building, we were in our temple on 55th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue in Manhattan. And across the street, there was this big apartment building. And there was one man that came out every day at the same time to walk his dog. And so one morning, Prabhupada was noticing, and he commented to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, look, this man walks his dog every day, exactly at the same time. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj replied, yes, Prabhupada, he has the dog trained very well. And Prabhupada raised an eyebrow and he looked at Tamal Krishna and he said, who has who trained? His point is, the man knew that the dog had to go at that time. So rain or shine, snow or whatever, he knows my dog has got to go. The dog is by the door, he wants to go. So it's kind of like the dog has the man trained. So anyway, let's get away from our pets in the Western world and get back. And we're on the subject of cats and dogs, so I can get that. Prabhupada makes this is incredible what he says here. A lot of people don't realize this, and we should remember this next statement. Consciousness is originally pure, like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness has changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna. When, therefore, one is situated in Krishna consciousness, He is in pure life. Let me back up and ask any questions if you need me to explain this. Consciousness is pure for the spirit soul. The spirit soul is pure. So you, the spirit soul, and you and all living entities are actually, in reality, 100% pure. You cannot be contaminated. You cannot be cut by a weapon, tried by the wind. You can't be burned by fire. You are eternal, and you cannot become contaminated. However, your consciousness can become contaminated. Prabhupada says the consciousness, your consciousness, is originally pure. But when you come in contact with the material energy, you start to be affected by the material energy. You start to believe that this world is real. This is my home. This world is real, but yet it's temporary. Like we were saying before, even when there's some change into our requirements, say to stay inside or to wear a mask or whatever, that affects us. Now, my reality is being altered, but we're in a temporary reality which has an illusory situation. It has illusory qualities because it's always changing. It's like people like to talk about, although they used to call it global warming, I think most people say climate change. Hey, welcome to reality. The climate has always been changing. It will continue to change. Are we to be led to believe that climate was changing from the very beginning of this planet? And then somewhere at some point in time, it was supposed to stop and never change again? Is that what we're supposed to believe? I mean, as the planet is cooling, which it is, it always has been, things change. So climate is always changing. Back in the early 70s, Prabhupada was visiting our farm, New Vrindavan, in West Virginia. And it was in the wintertime. It was very cold. And this one devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'm so sorry that it's so cold here for you." And there was some other conversation, but Prabhupada made this comment that someday this place, this New Vrindavan, will be tropical. Someday it will be tropical here. So does he have a crystal ball? Or does he just have access to his knowledge, eternal knowledge? The living entity is Sat, you're eternal. Chit, you're full of knowledge, know everything. And Ananda, you're eternally blissful. So Prabhupada knew this planet's always been changing, it will continue. No surprise. It's kind of hard to surprise somebody with a fact when they already know the fact. So consciousness is pure because the spirit soul is pure. You are pure. But your consciousness is changed according to the association of material qualities. You're in the body of a human being, and you're doing a very good job of following your conception of a human being. The soul that's occupying the dog is doing an excellent job of following the life of a dog. So your consciousness has been, although it was pure when you came into this material world, it's been adulterated. It's been mixed, and you're confused. You start to think now, oh, I'm this and I'm that. No matter what form of life you have, you're never going to be satisfied. You're always going to be wanting something. Regardless of how rich and famous you get in this human form of life, you're still going to want something. We see people who become rich and famous. Many times they die of overdoses of drugs. They drink themselves to death. Uh, they have very poor relationships. So they're thinking, because I have so much wealth, I should be enjoying on a higher level. Sex life should be better to me because I'm rich. And so, my dear wife, I think I need to get rid of you and get another one to enjoy on a higher level with. So, even the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, he had the most expensive uh, divorce ever in the history of this planet. So he goes down in history for now, the Guinness Book of World Records for the most expensive divorce of any man ever in the material world. I think it cost him like $64 billion or something like that, so that he could get a new sex partner. So even though he had close to $200 billion, he needed better sex life. So he didn't work with his wife. So divorce is very painful, and it's painful when you're rich too. So even though Jeff is very famous, very powerful, very wealthy, he's suffering like everything. I'm sure he enjoys some very big yachts and some very beautiful homes, but it's offset by great suffering. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in pure life. This means when you get your consciousness back centered around consciousness of your loving eternal relationship with Krishna through chanting his names, performing devotional service, associating with other like-minded people, you get your consciousness of Krishna back, and you get to live a pure life, a life free from speculation, a life free from the struggle of material life. That doesn't mean that if you're a devotee of Krishna that you don't have to worry about catching the virus. No, you still might. Some devotees have. But it means that your way of dealing with these things is entirely different, because you're aware that you're an eternal living entity, an eternal portion of Krishna. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life, he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of the many other forms where there are 8,400,000 species of life. So this sentence here is very important. Prabhupada says, but if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, what are we talking about? Material mentality, false proprietorship. I own this. This is mine. I am so powerful. I am so popular. I am so this, and I am this body. This body is mine. Well, no, you may think that it is, but no, it's not. This body, like the rest of this material world, I think many people can agree that the world belongs to God. The world belongs to he who created this world. So that would be God. So the world belongs to God. And if your body is made up of particles from this world, then your body belongs to God. So the devotee of Krishna realizes that his body that he's occupying is like a temple. I'm living in a temple. And so I'm using this temple as an ashram, a place of spiritual advancement, to regain my lost loving relationship with God. So therefore, I feed it a certain way, I bathe it and keep it clean, I decorate it to appeal to him. The devotee puts tilak on because it attracts Krishna's attention. He's very happy when he sees the devotee decorating his body in such a way to attract him, not to attract a sex partner or attract himself. It's okay if you want to look nice and take care of your hair. That's fine. You know, be attractive, but it's also nice to kind of factor God into it as well. After all, the body belongs to him. So take good care of it. If the world says, look, it's dangerous outside, the scientists, the doctors are saying you need to self-quarantine because you're in Krishna's body, and this body is a good tool for worshiping Krishna and ultimately helping you go back home, back to Godhead, then you should be very serious about taking care of it. I don't mean that you should become some sort of a fanatic dieter or whatever. Some people get so caught up in it that they become bodily conscious. Just keep it fit. Take good care of it, you know, like you do your car. Most people will take very good care of their car. So, are there any questions or comments at this time?
So this is Kurt.
Hey, Kurt.
Hi, Harry Bull. I really like a whole lot of what you said. I really appreciate when you take the time to talk with us. It's really great. Particularly, you know, you were talking about how everything is essentially dependent upon perception, and it made me think about recall a couple of things. One is, you know, it's often important for us to have, you know, facilities in our lives so that we can check our perceptions. Like, for instance, you know, so you might, if you think a certain way, you might go to if you have a certain conception, you might go to a psychologist. If it's on a spiritual level, well, that's when, you know, that's one of the roles of the spiritual master, is to clear up certain kinds of perceptions. And I know that, you know, and that's one of the more difficult roles of the spiritual master, actually, in many cases, but it's so essential, you know, because I know in my own life, you know, when I've thought certain things and they've seemed to be so incredibly real to me because I'm experiencing them on an emotional level. And when you start to experience something on an emotional level, you get the fight or flight response and you get all kinds of things going on. But then at certain points, you know, I have to ask myself, well, are you going to trust what your Guru Maharaj said or not? You know, relative to whatever it is that I'm experiencing that's causing me this distress, you know. So I just wanted to make that point that, you know, that we should have individuals in our lives or facilities in our lives, whether it be mental health, whether it be spiritual master, you know, to help us check some of those perceptions, because those perceptions oftentimes, you know, are more difficult obstacles than the coronavirus, right? You know, than something like, you know, so not to belittle the coronavirus, but you know, and yeah, and the whole thing about the I liked the points you're making about the purports in relation to the gross body and the subtle body, because we essentially, as you were saying, we're creating our subtle body now, so that if we leave in the spirit soul, we take as spirit souls, we take the path of least resistance when we leave the body. So if we had a human body, but our subtle body is the subtle body of a pig, well, that's where, you know, that subtle body is going to carry us to a pig body, basically, right? So it really kind of made me pause. And of course, I've heard all this many times, but it kind of made me pause for a moment, because I was thinking about, you know, sadhana and thinking about, you know, japa and yuga dharma and such. And I was thinking, you know, okay, what is actual human behavior? if we're human beings, how are human beings supposed to behave? And of course, that's what Shastra teaches us. That's what Srila Prabhupada teaches us, and so forth, right? That is, okay, we have this human form of life. Here's what it's really about, you know. So, so anyway, I really valued what you had to say. So thank you very much, Prabhu.
It's totally, truly my pleasure. Yeah, this subtle body is very difficult for us to understand. It's very simple to understand, but because of our conditioning, it can be very difficult. Subtle body, well, of the elements of the material energy, there is earth, water, air, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So, and those are in the order of their grossness or their perceptibility by the senses: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Then there are three subtle uh, particles, subtle things, uh, which are the subtle body. They're made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now, there's where we get into a bit of a problem trying to understand, because I think I am my mind. I think I am my mind. You kind of have me believing that I'm not my body. All right, I'm following you there because I'm going to leave this body. If I'm eternal, I'm going to go to another body. So perhaps I'm not this body. But are you going to tell me that I'm not my mind? No. The mind is basically the sixth sense. You've got taste, touch, smell, sight, sound. You've got those senses you can hear and taste. And then the mind is like the driver of the senses. It's like the central, what is it? Central processing unit. The mind is like, all right, the nose is telling me that there's pizza somewhere around. You see, or the mind, which I think I am, but I'm not. So the mind starts to perceive, ooh, pizza. I got that through the nose. Now the tongue becomes agitated. Gee whiz, pizza sounds like a good idea. Or maybe you'll see a picture of pizza being advertised on a billboard, whatever. So because I think that I am my mind, and my mind starts being inclined towards pizza, I think I want pizza. But really, the soul, I'm the owner of the mind, you see? And what if I have my mind trained to obey me? What if it's 9:30 at night or 10 o'clock or something? It's late in the evening. And my mind starts perceiving that there's pizza somewhere around, and it starts to get agitated and want pizza. It's got the tongue all excited, pizza, pizza. All right, if I have my mind controlled properly, or if I realize that I'm not my mind, I may say, my dear mind, absolutely no, that's out of the question. If I eat pizza this late, I'm not going to feel well tomorrow morning, and I have a big day ahead of me tomorrow. See what I mean? So I'm going to control you, my dear mind. And if you practice controlling your mind, self-mind control, you can get the mind to the point that when it smells pizza at 10 o'clock at night, it won't even go for it. It will say, oh my God, that's too heavy, you see. If it's unbridled, it's like a horse going down the road. If he's unbridled, he may want to get off the path and go eat some green grass, but you need him to keep going. The horse is working for you, not you working for the horse. So you can train your mind to work for you and to serve you, rather than you being a servant of your mind and simply catering to the whims of the mind. which, by the way, is what most people, most living entities do. Animals, they cater to the whims of their minds. Human beings do the same thing, except when you become a little bit advanced in Krishna consciousness. Then you can start to have some control of your mind. Someone asked me if I believed in mind control, and I said, yeah, you should control your mind every chance you get. Because if you don't, it will certainly do its best to control you. So, thank you, Kurt. Appreciate that comment. Is there anybody else that has anything to say? You can ask a question or make a comment. Anas, do you have a comment?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
If it's okay, I have a question regarding the balancing. You mentioned that our body is the temple of Krishna, which is wonderful. I fully agree. In the family, the husband is a representative of God, right?
Yeah.
And if for the husband, for example, tilaka or decorating that would be interesting or pleasing for Krishna will not be that interesting for husband. How we would balance these things, if it's okay, if you could say a few words about that.
Yeah. Could you ask your question again?
Balancing probably between what we would like to do for Krishna, to please Krishna, and what we could do for husband as representative of God, even though husband may be not interested in things that are pleasing Krishna.
Good question. That's a perfect question. The nature of the living entity, you, the soul, is to serve. That is our nature. So, of course, we serve God, but we also serve one another. That gives us great pleasure to serve Krishna and all of his parts and parcels, all living entities. So, there's no question that the husband is not serving you. Husband is serving you, isn't he? Does he goes to work? So he's performing some service. So you're performing some service to the husband. That by you doing your duty as a wife, that is service to Krishna. You're serving Krishna by doing your duty because you're a devotee of Krishna. It's like if you worked in the bank and you went to the bank as a bank teller. And because you're a devotee of Krishna, I do everything as an offering to Krishna. So being a wife, I do that as an offering to Krishna, which means I will be the best wife that I can be.
Right.
I'll be the very best wife that I possibly can be.
Okay.
So, and that gives you the balance that I think you're seeking.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much.
And we should, when we're doing service, we shouldn't keep score. Like, well, I cooked your breakfast and your lunch. Now you need to do something for me. That's tainted. Right. Out of love, I just want to serve you.
Yes.
See? And yes. I don't want to keep score.
Yes, see? I agree.
You may serve me back. I'm not going to see so much what I'm doing for you. I'm going to see what you do for me. You know, because everything you do, I have so much appreciation. And I'm not going to say, well, you're only doing this little bit and I'm doing so much. See what I mean?
Yeah.
That's material consciousness. That's, as they say in Texas, that's business. You heard that term, business? Business. It's just business.
Yeah.
You know, quid pro quo. I do for you, you give something equal back to me.
Okay.
You know?
Right.
So that's just business. That's not love.
Mm-hmm.
Love is I do for you. And if the other person feels, well, no, I want to do for you, well, then we have really sweet love.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, these lectures are wonderful, full of
Great,
knowledge.
it's great pleasure for me.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Bhagwan Nard, I guess we've reached the end of our rope. Huh? Let's see.
All right. Nobody else wants to ask the guru a question? Anybody? What about Lee or Farzani?
Looking at the
I
comments.
challenge you to a question.
Yeah,
I actually just wanted to say how much I appreciate this is Bakali. I'm really glad to have been able to see you and hear from you today. I have to run because I got to get the kids in bed.
yeah, you got to take care of the kids and say hi to your lovely wife for me. Say hi to
I
the
sure
kids
will.
and
Yes,
give
sir.
yourself a great big hug for me.
I sure will. Hare Krishna.
Before you go, let's all have a nice virtual hug for each other. Okay. Okay.
It was so good to see you.
It was absolutely my pleasure, Lee. And all
Thank
the
you
rest
so
of you.
much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Everyone, please take care. Take good care of yourself because you belong to Guru and Krishna. And we will see you again next time soon. All glories, Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Guy.
Hare Krishna.